In August of 1938, an influential science fiction writer named John W. Campbell, Jr. published a novella in his popular sci-fi magazine Astounding Science Fiction under the pseudonym of Don Stewart. The name of the novella was Who Goes There? It told the story of a team of American scientists in Antarctica who discover an extraterrestrial life form frozen in a block of ice. When the scientists bring the block of ice into their base, the ice eventually thaws and the creature inside breaks free from its icy prison to begin killing off the characters one by one. The scientists name the creature the Thing because no one knows what its true form is. It's a shapeshifter that can imitate the appearances of every living thing on the planet. And every time it's seen, it's in the process of absorbing someone, where it has a seemingly endless amount of claws, teeth, body parts, and appendages. It was truly both a frightening and original monster for the time it was created in. Who Goes There? Was one of the best received stories ever to be published in astounding science fiction. Its popularity even reached out of the magazine's boundaries, and a film adaptation was in plans. Writer-director Charles Lederer was tasked with adapting the novella into a screenplay, with rewrites that were conducted by two massive Hollywood directors, Howard Hawks and Ben Hecht. The film's director was Christian Nyby, a collaborator of Howard Hawks, who helped him with a couple of other films, but this one would be his first credit as director. The first screen adaptation of Who Goes There, titled The Thing from Another World, was released on April 29, 1951, to a massive box office success and a decent critical success. While this is a great movie with excellent dialogue and special effects that were incredible for the time, it strayed very far from the source material. The setting of both the book and the film are polar opposites. Literally, the book takes place in the South Pole while the film is set in the North. It doesn't really matter that much, but another huge change from the book is the monster. While in the novella the Thing was a shapeshifter whose original form is never known or described, the movie version is a super tall humanoid beast whose skin is made out of a vegetable substance that was played by actor James Arness, a change that was clearly done due to a lack of special effects capabilities. Over time, both the novella and the film were celebrated as masterpieces of both science fiction and horror. In 1976, a sci-fi comic book magazine, Starstream, centered its very first issue around a comic adaptation of the novella. 5 years later, a new adaptation of the novella would be released that would live up to Campbell's original vision. In 1981, up-and-coming independent director John Carpenter had made a string of successful movies starting in 1978 with his magnum opus Halloween. After Halloween, he directed a couple successful TV movies and returned to horror with a moderately successful movie called The Fog. Next, he made his own science fiction masterpiece, Escape from New York. Having seen the original 1951 movie as a young kid, Carpenter had aspirations to one day do his own version of the novella. So in 1981, after the release of Escape from New York, Carpenter sat down with screenwriter Bill Lancaster and began pre-production for his own version of Who Goes There, titled The Thing. This version of the story was much more faithful to the novella. It took place in Antarctica. Some of the characters shared names with ones in the book, and most importantly, the Thing was a shapeshifter, and it did so in the most disgusting, gory ways imaginable. This film has some of the most amazing practical effects ever put in a movie, and are a testament to how good special effects can be without the aid of computers. But what truly makes this movie a work of art is not the effects, but the atmosphere and tension. The characters are not that deep, but they are well realized and believably acted, especially by the likes of Kurt Russell and Wilford Brimley. When these characters are at each other's throats, you feel like you're right there with them. The sense of paranoia, mistrust, and claustrophobia in this movie is simply that potent. The Antarctic setting also contributes greatly to the atmosphere of the movie, and that setting is also enhanced to 100% by the absolutely creepy musical score composed by the late legendary film composer Ennio Morricone, who some of you may remember as a composer for the scores of Sergio Leone's famous Dollars Western trilogy. For such an amazing movie, you would think that this movie would have really prospered with both the critics and the box office. Well, that simply is not so. See, The Thing was released in 1982, in between the releases of two cornerstone sci-fi movies, Blade Runner and E.T. So it was a case of wrong place at the wrong time. However, on video, the film saw a much more fruitful reception. Over time, the movie was ultimately recognized as a classic and gained a strong cult following. The one reason I can guess why so many people didn't like this movie was just timing. E.T. was fresh in everyone's minds. Everybody seemed so well acclimated to the idea of a friendly alien that a movie about another evil one didn't seem that attractive. Again, wrong place, wrong time. But seriously, this is one of my favorite movies ever. It's as close to perfect as you can make a horror movie. So why would you ever want to make another one? That one is going to be the subject of my newest review, ladies and gentlemen. But to go into the history of this movie, all I have to say is that The Thing has sort of been made into a franchise. There was a comic book series and a video game which I thought was kind of shit. Needless to say though, by the early 2000s, a lot of people had heard of The Thing, and it amassed a colossal fan base, so the idea of remaking this classic movie, which was already a remake in itself, would no doubt ensure a wealthy amount of death threats. So, the general idea that the Hollywood business suits had come up with to milk the John Carpenter masterpiece was to make a prequel, since most of the original actors who were in the movie were quite old. The whole pitch was to recount the events that happened in the Norwegian base that we see at the beginning of the John Carpenter movie. An interesting idea if it was done right. Who do they hire to direct a movie that serves as a prelude to one of the greatest science fiction horror movies of all time? Ridley Scott? Nope. Guillermo del Toro? Nada. Peter Jackson? Nope. John Carpenter himself was out of the question because ever since the scrutiny he faced while directing Big Trouble in Little China, he pretty much gave a rock-solid middle finger to big Hollywood studios. Zack Snyder was once considered to direct it. Whatever happened to that plan? His Dawn of the Dead remake was great. Nope. They never once considered handing this project into more capable hands, so instead, they gave it to some Dutch guy with only one other directing credit and whose name I can't even pronounce. And this movie is just bad. It not only fails as a prequel to the 1982 classic, but as a horror movie, period. It is infested with so many modern horror cliches that it disgraces the name of the film that it is a prequel to. Now, I know I already did a review of this movie back in October of 2011, when this movie first came out, but this is going to be a much more in-depth review of the 2011 prequel to John Carpenter's The Thing. to all the people who are watching it, you are going to enjoy this a lot more than I am. Well, let's not waste any more time, and let's get into it. The movie opens with some Norwegian guys driving a giant snowmobile in the middle of an open ice field. One of the guys makes a joke that immediately impairs my ability to care if they live or die.
Gubben og kjerringa ligger og knuller ut av ville helvete, og plutselig så står guttungen I døren. Han springer ut av rommet. Tårene bare spruter. Så sier mora sånn, herregud, hva gjør vi nå? Hva gjør vi nå? Så sier faren bare at det her, det skal jeg ordne. Så går han mot guttungen på rommet hans og åpner opp døren. Der ser han faen meg lille Sven ligge opp på farmor og bare gi jo hjem. Bare pumper der og opp og ned, opp og ned, opp og ned. Og så snur han seg mot far sin og så sier han, ikke så artig når du egen mor, det vel?
Incest jokes. This is a prequel to a movie that starred Kurt Russell, Wilford Brimley, and Keith David. And it had music composed by a cinematic musical legend who did the music for The Good, The Bad and the Ugly, and The Untouchables. Seriously, Snake Plissken, the Diabetes Guy, Captain Anderson, and Ennio Morricone. And they started out with an incest joke?
Okay.
This is the first of many modern horror movie tropes that this movie borrows from. This trope specifically is a total lack of class. After that bit of screenwriting diarrhea, the giant ice rover rolls over some thin ice and falls into a big crevice where it gets stuck. The Norwegian guys turn on the lights to reveal the crashed flying saucer that we saw at the beginning of the original movie, and then the title shows. This could have been a decent prologue if two things were changed. 1. The omission of the incest joke. 2. The ridiculous amount of CGI used in the sequence where the rover falls into the ice. You already have a giant vehicle for a prop. You can use it to film an action scene. It's really hard for me to take this scene seriously when it looks like it belongs in a Pixar movie. Use a revolving set, get a snow machine and the vehicle, and shoot almost the whole rest of the scene at close angles. It's not that fucking hard to make something like this look convincing, and yet somehow you manage to make it not look convincing. Anyways, we cut to a scene where we are introduced to our first female protagonist, a paleontologist named Dr. Kate Lloyd, played by Ramona Flowers herself, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, whose direction in this movie mainly consists of looking stone-faced and not making a single emotional inflection in her voice. Kristen Stewart, anyone? Anyways, she's studying some weird dog creature that is never brought up again in the film when she is interrupted by some Norwegian doctor guy. Some Norwegian doctor guy exposits that a team of Norwegians stationed in Antarctica have made a huge discovery that could shake the scientific world to its foundations. So they decide to share this monumental secret with an American. The Norwegians discover an alien spaceship buried in the ice, and they don't contact their own top scientists and authorities. Instead, they contact the American ones. Norwegians, everybody, when they aren't making jokes about incest, they're sharing their deepest secrets with foreigners. If this was really the movie's reason for having American characters in it, this is probably the most contrived reason I've ever seen for it. Sorry, I need to move on. I can't dwell on every single scene. So they fly a helicopter from the US to Antarctica. Bullshit! Anyways, we traveled to the caves where they found the spaceship. This is obviously before they ignite the bombs to cave in the ship like we saw in the original film. They discover the thing in the ice right next to the ship. how are they walking across the big ice roof that's covering the spaceship? I mean, if it couldn't support the weight of a big ice tractor, then who's to say it can support the weight of a whole bunch of humans walking in a group across its surface? Anyway, they talk a bit and we finally get to see the inside of the Norwegian base, and boy does it look exactly like it does in the original film. I'm no expert on Arctic research bases, but I'm pretty sure they all look different enough from each other on the inside. The base in this movie is indistinguishable from Outpost 31. You know, the American base. Which would be fine if it was Outpost 31, only thing is it's not Outpost 31. The set designer in this movie should have been replaced. The sets look too much like the original film. Moving on, we cut to a scene where all the characters are looking at the ice block. Have you noticed how little winter clothes these actors are wearing? It's like they aren't even that cold. Hell, they don't even react to the cold. This movie is set in Antarctica. Act like it. Then Dr. Lloyd argues with the head Norwegian guy on the method to extract the thing from the ice. He then confronts her about it.
Kate, just a second. In the future, don't contradict me in front of those people again.
I just thought it.
You're not here to think. You're here to get the thing safely out of the ice. I hope we understand each other.
Well, you sure didn't need her help to contradict yourself there, did you, asshole? This guy recruits a scientist to help him procure the alien from the ice block, and then he chastises her for doing her job. Why do you even need her to help you get the alien out of the ice? You have hundreds of guys around to help you do that. Anyways, they drill a hole in the ice and stop for some reason, and later that night, I guess they decide to have a party. One American guy wanders into the room where the block of ice is, and we see another modern horror movie trope, the unfathomably stupid character. And then we see another trope rear its ugly head only seconds later.
Boom! Jesus. Screw you, man. Son of a...
The false alarm jump scare. This one dates all the way back to the slasher movies of the 1980s, and it does not belong in a movie that bears the namesake of The Thing. A movie that was far above said slasher movies and didn't need to stoop to their level. But unfortunately, there is a lot more where that came from. Also, this scene doesn't make any sense. How is the alien even able to burst out of the freaking ice? I can't even begin to list the reasons as to why that's completely implausible. If the alien was frozen in the ice completely unconscious, there would be no way for it to regain consciousness in the ice, and even if it did, there would be no way for it to amass enough force in its paralyzed limbs to not only break open the ice, but propel itself upward into the ceiling. How the fuck did it regain its consciousness anyway? You know, this was done 100 times better in the original 1950s version. In that movie, the ice slowly melts away, and eventually completely melts off of the thing's body. It's a logical, cohesive explanation from a movie that came out 60 years before this one. This was the point in the theater where I officially stopped taking this movie seriously. So moving on, everyone learns that the thing is loose and they all go hunting for it. You know, I just noticed that I barely know anything about any of these characters. Also, it's only 26 minutes into the movie, and the thing is already loose. I know we saw the thing early in the Carpenter movie, but this is a prequel. It needs to take its time, but it doesn't. Suspense? Build-up? Character development? What the fuck are those? So, we see two other Norwegian guys looking underneath a building in a scene that is definitely not set up for another jump scare. We see a guy get pulled underneath the building by the thing, and we see what are probably the only decent special effects there are in the entire movie. The Norwegian guys torch the thing, and we see a scene where all of the characters are dealing with the death of the Norwegian who we still knew nothing about. We then get a scene pretty much borrowed shot for shot from the original. Although I will give the movie this much credit, the effects shown during this autopsy scene are pretty damn good, and they definitely make me wish the rest of the effects in this movie were practical. The next day, the American guys decide to fly somewhere to warn everyone else about the thing. Kate finds some metal teeth fillings and a giant bloody spot in the shower and deduces that one of the guys on the helicopter is the thing. She tries to get the helicopter to land, and then this happens.
Probably just forgot something. We'll be in the air in no time. Okay? Don't worry. Hang in there.
Why did we need to see that? We see the obvious CGI helicopter crash far away from the base. Kate goes into the bathroom and sees that the big puddle of blood is gone. She goes into the room where everyone else is stressing out about what's happening and gives more exposition about the thing that we already know from the original movie. But gives some new exposition that really doesn't work. We learn that the thing cannot eat things that are inorganic, and that it expels any metal or synthetic object from its body. This would be an interesting idea, if it wasn't already contradicted by what's explained to us in the John Carpenter movie. Don't know what I mean? Well, then allow me to use Kurt Russell himself to explain it.
You tie a palmer over here. We're gonna draw a little bit of everybody's blood. Because we're gonna find out who's the thing. Watching Norris in there gave me the idea that maybe every part of him was a whole. Every little piece was an individual animal with a built-in desire to protect its own life. You see, when a man bleeds, it's just tissue. The blood from one of you things won't obey when it's attacked. It'll try and survive. Crawl away from a hot needle, say.
See, every tiny molecule of the thing is a living, breathing organism. So the idea that it can't consume things that are synthetic is preposterous. We put inorganic things into our bodies all the time. And we don't just take them out, even though in most cases we probably should. Organic creatures are adaptable. They can go on living even when they have a piece of metal stuck in their body. Hell, I've even got a pellet in my nose. My criticism of this idea actually stems more from the fact that it's poorly developed rather than implausible. If you remember another scene from the original movie where Dr. Copper is trying to resuscitate Norris and his stomach opens up, you may notice that Copper's hands are still holding the defibrillators when Norris's stomach is eating them up. Why didn't he spit them out then? This new detail was never really established in the original film, which is why it's nonsensical here. Okay, I really gotta try to control my bitching if I'm gonna make it through this review in a reasonable amount of time. But this movie is just so crammed with problems that I have a hard time deciding which ones to talk about and which ones not to. Anyway, Kate, along with the only other woman in this movie, decide to head over to a closet where a bunch of vehicle keys are. only for the woman to transform into a thing. Jesus Christ, those effects are horrible. Also, we run into another contradiction. Does anyone remember in the original movie how methodical and silent the Thing was? When the Thing was going to absorb someone, it did so in a subtle and concise manner. Whenever it absorbed Norris or Bennings, it never drew attention to itself. The only times it did expose itself was when it had no other options. When it was a dog and was put in the kennel, it didn't want to stay there, so it decided that now was the time to make some noise. When it impersonated Norris when he had a heart attack, it knew it would be discovered very quickly and decided to act before that happened. During the blood test, the Thing had no other choice but to reveal itself. They were going to discover who it was eventually. But other than those 3 times, the Thing mostly restrained itself. It kept itself in disguise. There is no way that the Thing from the original Carpenter movie and the one from this movie are one and the same. This Thing has absolutely no sense of subtlety. It explodes itself out of an ice block, crashes a helicopter, and it attempts to absorb someone in the most ostentatious way possible. Why? Why is that? Answer me, Mr. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to call you Mr. Heineken. Because that's gotta be what you're drunk off of in order to make a movie this bad. So Kate runs away from the giant topless lady Thing. The Thing kills someone, then all of a sudden some guy just shows up with a flamethrower. Why? Why the fuck is he holding a flamethrower? What in the blue fuck gave him the idea of, I think I'm gonna walk around with my flamethrower on? In the original movie, they provided an explanation for the flamethrower.
Mac wants the flamethrower. Mac wants the what? That's what he said. Now move. Damn it.
Yeah, I'll admit the fact that they have a flamethrower lying around is pretty contrived, but the fact that Puff the Magic Dragon here is just randomly carrying one around is even more contrived. You don't get a free pass here, Mr. Heineken. John Carpenter still handled this plot hole better than you did. Okay, that's the last overly long critical diatribe I plan to go on. I gotta get through the rest of this damn movie. Okay, so they burn the woman Thing. They rip off a few more scenes and shots from the original movie. We find out the 2 American pilots survived the crash, which would have been a good suspenseful device had they not shown what happened on the helicopter earlier. The characters decide to do the blood test, but someone burns all the blood, and these 2 guys start accusing each other for absolutely no reason. More guys go outside, other guys are being held against the wall, someone gets shot, and I'm finding it very difficult to care about anything that is happening. Some guy gets exploded, and finally we see something happen. Unfortunately, it's more terrible CGI effects. I'm serious, is that the Thing that this movie is supposed to be about? Or is it the Flood from the Halo games? Because I can't tell the difference. You know, this is really unacceptable. Spider hands, tentacles. Is this the best you could come up with? You have a huge wealth of amazing fan art dedicated to the Thing, and this generic dreck is what you go with? And then the random Norwegian's body goes from spouting highly generic video game spiders and tentacles to mutating into a creature that's supposed to resemble the corpse from the beginning of the original movie. You know, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The real effects from the original movie are far superior to this cow shit. So Kate and the last living American pilot, it's the white guy, big shock, decide to go hunting for the Thing. Joel Edgerton here cleaves one of the Thing spiders in half with his axe and decides to leave it embedded in the wall for no other reason than to provide a ham-fisted explanation for how Mac and Copper found it there in the Carpenter version. The 2 then decide to walk slowly through the storeroom, and you know, movie, if you made your jump scares any more obvious, you would have their exact location highlighted in neon lights. The thing jumps through a window, it stalks Edgerton some more, and ends up burned to death in the snow. Once again, conveniently leaving it there for the characters in the next movie to find. Why do we need to see this? They both see someone taking off in a snow tractor and they pursue them. The two American characters stop their vehicle at the side of the downed spaceship. Why the fuck is there still an ice roof over it?
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me that they forgot to shoot the scene where all the Norwegian guys plant thermite charges over the site and blow up the ship? That was one of the most important plot points of the movie. How could you overlook something so significant? If you're going to be a prequel to a movie, then that means you have to answer every single question that the preceding movie established. This movie officially exists in its own continuity. This is not the same world that the 1982 version of The Thing exists in. In that movie, we saw videos of the Norwegians blowing up the spaceship. In this movie, that never fucking happens. So our heroes decide to walk across the top of the ship when all of a sudden the ship reactivates. What? This ship is lying dormant for hundreds of thousands of years and it chooses now to reactivate? Scratch that. It was even capable of reactivating in the first place? Well then how the fuck did it even crash? There's no visible outside or inside damage to speak of. And if the ship was capable of taking off again, then why the shit did the alien even walk outside and get himself frozen to begin with? All he had to do was reactivate his ship and get the hell out of Dodge. This plot hole is so goddamn huge you can fly the entire spaceship through it.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Anyways, Kate wanders through the ship until she finds the central control room or something and comes face to face with the final boss thing and oh Jesus. Okay, I want to let you in on a little secret. The core reason why the effects in the original Thing were so good, other than the fact that they were practical and the fact that Rob Bottin was one creative and one messed up son of a bitch, was because a few years earlier, John Carpenter had enlisted the aid of a cinematographer named Dean Cundey. Dean Cundey was a great cinematographer, because if you take the puppets and animatronics in the original Thing, and you subtract the dynamic lighting that Cundey had brought to the film, then they would look so fucking fake. But with the phenomenal lighting that the movie had, it made the effects look as real as the actors. I could probably live with the fact that the CGI effects in this movie are as wretched as they are if they had the sufficient amount of lighting to hide their fakiness. But nope, Mr. Heineken's version of the Thing involves having all the creatures being revealed in as bright lighting as humanly possible. And as a result, they look like shit. Also, there are 2 jump scares within the course of this scene. Mr. Heineken, allow me to show you a proper jump scare.
This is pure nonsense. Doesn't prove a thing.
I thought you'd feel that way, Gary. You were the only one that could have got to that blood. We'll do you last.
See, the reason why this jump scare works is because we are misled on who the Thing might be. We see McCready holding Palmer's blood. Gary objects to his methods, putting him in the spotlight to be a contender for the Thing. so all of our focus is on him, when all of a sudden,
We'll do you last.
that is a jump scare done right. You do not see it coming, and in addition to that, it's also more effective when it's cushioned by a strong atmosphere. Moving on, she kills the giant tentacle thing, she and Edgerton escape, and she discovers in a surprisingly intelligent piece of writing that Edgerton is in fact a thing. And then she torches his ass. The end. Oh yeah, there is a pre-credit scene consisting of nothing but fan service as we see several pieces of imagery from the original movie, i.e. the guy in the chair with his throat slit. We don't know how his throat got slit, or even how he ended up in the predicament, but we also see one guy land in a helicopter and another guy show up. We then see the infamous dog take off from the base, and the two guys get in the helicopter and follow him, pretty much ending exactly where the original Carpenter movie begins. This movie was simply atrocious. It conforms to so many modern horror movie cliches that it does not deserve to be associated with the amazing 1982 film. This movie is generic, the characters are boring, the effects are horrible, the plot holes are everywhere, and it contradicts some of the things that were established in the Carpenter movie. So it fails as both a serious horror movie and a prequel to what I consider to be one of the greatest movies ever made. This has been another epically long movie review from yours truly. I give the 2011 version of The Thing 1.5 Heineken bottles out of 5. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it.